So the talk today is going to be about deepening your practice. And when I say your practice, it doesn't mean there's some nebulous thing called practice that's apart from the rest of experience. It's simply this moment deepening itself. The investigation comes out of this mystery. And we've all come here to deepen our investigation. Sometimes that arises as the use of a koan or a question or a sense practice, working with the senses, just the seen, just the heard, just the felt. Sometimes it's simply a matter of surrender. Or fully giving yourself to the movement that's taking you deeper or out of the context of what you take yourself to be. This is how it often feels when we've been using a koan or a one-pointed approach or self-inquiry, and it just lights on fire. We feel a sort of simultaneous excitement and a sort of terror that something has taken over this whole movement, and it's not us. And it's vastly more powerful than anything we can comprehend. It's a force of nature. So sometimes the practice is just doing what you can to not get in its way. It's a willingness. Sometimes we feel almost as if a scaffolding has broken and there's a sort of free fall. And often the next scaffolding is more subtle. And if we're attuned and willing, then the next scaffolding falls as well. And the next, and the next. And it can be quite a trip. You don't even know what's going to come out the other side. You don't know if you're going to survive the fall. But I would suggest just let those scaffoldings break one after the other, after the other. This happens as an event. It also happens in the moment, in micro events. Moments of the opportunity to allow identity structures to disentangle, drop, dissolve. So if we're working with a koan or a question, excuse me, a koan, a question, a one-pointed approach, and we're looking to deepen the insight. Thinking about the future, what it's going to mean to you, imagining how close you are, anticipating. These aren't deepening, these are simply thoughts. And you're not doing that. You're not doing the thinking, but it can be hypnotic. So acknowledge, oh, okay, those are thoughts about how I expect this to go, what so-and-so said about it, what to look for, what it might mean to me. These sorts of thoughts come naturally, especially earlier on when we're working with say a koan or a one-pointed approach. Similarly, but on the sort of the other side of the coin, thoughts about, oh, I'm probably not getting this right. I don't trust myself. I don't understand this. This probably isn't what he's talking about. Dismissing your own experience. These are doubts, thoughts. They're also okay. But again, binding. They're a little hypnotic if we don't recognize them for what they are. So we're not quite looking in either of those directions. We're not trying to anticipate the future or plan our enlightenment. And we're not trying to hold on to the uncomfortable but safe raft of doubt that keeps us feeling a sort of hesitation tone. Both of those are valuable and rewarded in the conventional life. Planning, and even planning for the worst case scenarios, thinking through possibilities. All of that's valuable in the conventional world, in regular life. But when we're investigating identity, they get in the way if we cling too tightly to those tendencies. So sometimes it's simply a matter of just recognizing thoughts as thoughts. And the beauty of, say, a koan like mu is that you can't think about it. You just can't think about it. The mind can't get anything on mu. Someone posted a comment on a video recently saying something like, well, couldn't you just use the word Jew or shmoo, or doesn't it do the same thing? And my answer, actually, I don't know the person, but if it was a serious question, the answer would be moo. You need to cut through that conception, that tendency to entertain yourself with the scintillating intelligence that we're so, enchanted with our own brilliance. It's fine, but when it comes to this, it's not getting you anywhere. Mu doesn't give a shit about what you think about mu, or it doesn't matter. It's just mu. So, mu. What is mu? The mind starts chattering on about the future. Okay, those are thoughts. It's fine. Oh, doubts. Oh, I'm probably doing this wrong. This can't be it. Can't be this simple. Thought. But what is mu? Mu. Don't separate. Mu's a mystery. It's the mystery. Who am I? Properly points to the same place once you've really digested that who am I is not anything about your narrative, your history, or your qualities, or your spiritual interest, endeavors, and accomplishments. It's none of that. That's not where it points. That's not where the question points. Who am I? Who am I? Not grasping any thought, any conception, any mental image. Not wrestling with them either, not pushing them away. Those are other thoughts. Just who? Go where you can only go without thought, without grasping thoughts, without concepts. It may feel like a very narrow doorway at first, but it's not. It becomes vast. So I return to terminology like letting these questions, koans, practices take you into a mystery. A friend, Ishwar, has said a few times, and I love the way he says it, when you step into the unknown or you're faced with the unknown, you can turn back to what you know, or you can keep going. Sometimes it's just that simple. How far you go, where you go, what it's like to go is not up to you. That's why it's the unknown. Might be right in front of your nose, might be vast, might feel like you're falling through scaffolding, but you can't decide how that's going to be. It may be a very, very simple experience. It may be a mind-blowing experience, but you can't decide how that's going to be because that's the known. And ironically, the known is not really the known. There's such a more profound knowing available. Knowingness. An undeniability, something more real than real, but you'll never be able to talk about it. I can't talk about it. I can talk around it. You can kind of point to it, but it's just not something that can be described. I could even try to say why it can't be described, because it's everything, but it's also not bound by everythingness, so it's also no thing. It's every sound, and it's only one sound. The sound of the crow is coming to mind. If you know what the sound is, you don't need a koan or a question. It's calling you in always. It's just a bird, right? So everything about retreat, the way it's set up, structured, the communal agreement to participate, is set up to deepen your practice, your insight. It's already happening all around you. Just see it, feel it, hear it. We've all come a long way to be here. And a part of us has never moved. We called ourselves here. You called yourself here. What is here right now in your experience that's never been anywhere else? It doesn't know anywhere else. It doesn't know about geography, space, or time. So there seems to be, or I guess depending on your perspective, there seems to be a bit of a divergence between maybe what I would call a practice working toward awakening or kensho, a complete merging with something, with a koan, mu, and a practice of just simple and clear, alert absorption. But at some point, even these are not two. Dogen has a lovely phrase he uses, practice enlightenment. They are the same. One moment of sitting is one moment of being a Buddha. Being awakeness. Being living truth. Even if there's doubt. Even if the apparent separate individual still feels like it's functioning. That's still the perfect functioning of unborn nature. So by, again and again, taking that moment to surrender, to feel just a little bit deeper, a little bit closer, you're in contact with the part of yourself that knows no distance. It's here right now. It's looking through your eyes, feeling through your skin. Knows no distance, no before and after, no awake, no asleep. The individual in contact with that which knows no individuation at all. That contact point is the beauty of this practice, retreat. So as we're working with a koan, a one-pointed approach, you'll start to pick it up at some point where the sense of you, the doer, you, the inquirer, you, the one that wants to wake up, wants to cross over, wants to let go, wants to go beyond suffering, wants to go beyond yourself, and knows that's the only way. There's a lot of will behind that, a lot of fire sometimes. Struggle, energy, focus down into that one point, into the one question. So powerful. It feels very personal. There's a point when that starts to feel like it's in contact with something impersonal. Something unimaginable, ineffable, but familiar, natural. That's where the rubber meets the road. So at that point, you're called on to not let your practice fall apart, your questioning, your focus. And at the same time, which requires alertness and remembering why you're doing this. And at the same time, being open more and more. Finding that place where the personal will to uproot its own delusion comes in contact with the mysterious, the unborn. And then be willing to stay there right at that point, where birth and death meet, where relative and absolute meet. Where it requires all of your will to stay there, and at the same time there's absolutely nothing to do at all, and no one's doing anything. Completely paradoxical. Makes no sense, but it doesn't have to at that point. You're starting to trust the Dharma vehicle. You're starting to trust nature, the natural movement, realization. And you're ultimately starting to trust that all the ideas you had about how to make yourself happy, how to find peace, etc., have failed. In the deepest way, they failed. Or they just don't. They're just the wrong tool for the job. There has to be that surrender. And when you feel that, those conditions coming together, it's really a magical time. And hearing this can make it sound romanticized, but it's very strange. It feels, again, almost like sort of terrifying, but also like you're being reborn. It's a quite a paradoxical place to be, but it's a good place to be. Now, I hesitate to talk too much about this because I know the mind will take notes. But the reason I say this isn't to give you a map or a path toward what I'm talking about. It's just to say, just keep at it. Keep honing down that one point. And at some point, when you feel this, when you start to perceive, oh, this, okay, oh, now I know what that means, that you don't freak out too much and just run away. That something in you knows. And it gets beyond your own judgment. Even my words of encouragement don't matter at this point. You'll feel it. It's a natural process taking over. But a natural process, I don't mean like a leaf falling from a tree. I mean like a raging river or a seismic event. It's quite powerful. And so, yeah, at this place, it's just a matter of being willing to just stay there and let what needs to happen. And you can do that sitting, standing, walking, laying down to go to sleep, while you're eating. You can carry it throughout the day, throughout the retreats, throughout other activities. And really from then on, it's a matter of, even as realization clarifies and perceptual filters fall away, it really is about a balance between the intention to continue to root out subtle delusion, or not subtle delusion, but to root out which does not feel fully real. And letting experience really show you how that happens. Letting sound, sensation, movement, movement of consciousness, letting those movements show you how this happens, how to dispel delusion. You can't be in the driver's seat anymore, but you can be a willing passenger and an alert passenger, taking it in and always being willing to, as Suzuki Roshi says, be alert for the mind weeds, plucking the mind weeds, the little fixations in thought that can catch us. This is how it should be. This is how I should be. This is how you should be. Oh, I've already woken up from this. I've already dealt with this emotion. Just watching for those mental states that tend to bypass a bit or just really momentarily distract from something that if we weren't distracted from, we might be able to see more clearly and integrate more fully in that moment. So being just alert enough to see what the mind is up to and whether or not there's any buy-in, stickiness, grasping of thoughts, pushing away of thoughts, avoidance, clinging. Now, occasionally someone will be working with a koan or an inquiry question, and they relate something like, it's not always completely clear to them, I think, but it can be, that really there's just a lot of frustration around it. Like, I want to make this happen, and it's just not happening. And they also sometimes sense that something about wanting to force it to happen may be preventing it or holding it back. And this is a sneaky one, because behind it often is anger, feelings of control, but it's clothed in the intention to wake up or continue to wake up. I might say it's just being a little too heavy-handed with practice. Not recognizing the signature of will or the signature of control can hang out for a long time. I think the solution for that, or one approach I think that's helpful, is just to acknowledge the emotion. I'm frustrated. I can't make life do what I want it to do right now. I want freedom right now, and I don't feel freedom, and that makes me mad. So feel the frustration. And continue to redirect the will around that frustration this is the beauty of a one-pointed approach, or koan, to the koan itself. Right? Control is a thought. Insistence that it goes the way I want it to right now, it's just a thought. It may feel like a very intense thought. There might be a lot of will behind it, a lot of belief behind it, but it really ultimately is a thought. So how can I pour my will more into mu? Don't separate. Into who am I? Don't separate. Let the question permeate your entire being, all of your intention, all of your will and your willingness. Just a subtle redirection. I've used this analogy before, but I think it's a pretty good one, and it can be helpful to correct these tendencies we sometimes have to like muscle practice too much. It's something like if you see a beautiful horse in a meadow and you don't know the horse, but it's off in the distance, and you're captivated by its beauty and its power, and you're curious about it naturally. But if you run up to the horse, you try to get close to it, yelling, "Horse, horse, hey, come on, I want to ride you," whatever, it's just going to walk away. You won't even get near it. And if you try to get close to it, it would run away faster than you could probably even come close to it. So that doesn't work. But you can become quiet and still through and through. Feel deeper into what is it that I want from that horse? What is it about the beauty of this moment that I'm projecting onto that animal over there? That I'm selling out my own true experience. If you're feeling joy, love, warmth, it's right there. It's not somewhere else. It's not in another person. It's not in a horse, etc. And as you contemplate this, you just fall deeper into your own experience. Become collected. The mind calms down, the body calms, the environment calms, and all of a sudden you feel the horse's face on your neck. It wanted to come see what you are. It came to you. Awakening really is kind of like that. Because all this will that we direct down into a question or a koan or a one-pointed approach, it's not the fault of reality, of truth, of awake nature. They're already here. They don't need our help. There's such a tremendous innocence that is recognized with this. That everything you need is already here. In the end, you really don't have to inquire into anything. But again, paradoxical, because there's already seeking going on. So to acknowledge the seeking and redirect it to its own source is skillful practice when it comes to inquiry and awakening. And that's what we do here. But it's also important to know at the very same time, your awake nature, your infinite nature, your ineffable nature that's so close that it's not even, can't even be described to be yours. There's no you in the equation. There's no self or other. It's that intimate, that real. It's already here. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to find it. You just kind of play a trick on yourself, hit yourself over the head, fall down, stand up, and there it is. That's what this is. There's a very funny story that I'll tell. It was a friend of mine who's a Roshi in Zen temple, essentially. And she said they were in the middle of a very intense sesshin, which is something like this. Only in Zen, a sesshin is somewhat more intense. I don't know if it's more psychologically intense, honestly. These retreats are very, very powerful. But it's physically more intense for sure. It's physically painful. Also, you sit more hours of the day and so forth. Regardless, it has the same quality of going down through your experience and all the shifts of mind and heart and all. Anyway, so she was saying that one of the practitioners realized Kensho sometime halfway through the sesshin. That's awakening, yeah. It was obvious. It's something about when you're in a cauldron of pain, psychological and physical pain, the contrast when you wake up is even more pronounced, probably. I would say, just because it's just so surprising. Either way, this gentleman woke up, and he was so surprised that he never had to do anything to wake up. He had been working hard at it, obviously, with the koan or whatever. And he was so surprised that it was already there, even though I'm sure he'd heard it 100 times, 1,000 times. couldn't believe it. He was so surprised. Then he got upset with the Roshi, and he said, I'm going to go out there and tell all these people to leave because they don't need to be here. They're already Buddha nature. She said I had to literally talk him out of doing that. So anyway, I thought that was really funny. And it's that striking to see that, oh my God, what I've been searching for really has always been here. And as silly as it is, the very fact that I've been searching for it seemed to obscure it. So it's like a mind game I was playing with myself. Sometimes that game ends on its own. Sometimes the mind somehow figures that out. I think that's a little more rare. More commonly, you hear about this type of stuff. You hear about other people who have gone through shifts in identity. You start to practice. You go to retreats. You take up a koan. You take up an inquiry practice, meditation practices, all of it. Then you start getting tastes of it. Start to dial in a little bit energetically. Then you realize you can't control it. You can't force that experience to happen again. And then you kind of almost forget about it. You almost have to forget about spirituality without that flavor in your life called spirituality, because it's just another flavor of you. And you forget about it because you've merged with the koan. You become almost obsessed with it, just move. No distance. Don't separate at all. Carry it with you like, I don't know, a cave person carrying fire for the tribe. You can't just forget where it is. You have to pay close attention. And something about it, there's some magic there where you really do forget why you wanted this, where you think you're going, what spirituality is about, what the Zen teacher's yakety-yakking about. It just like fades into the background, it becomes gray, and there's just moo. And then the mind goes, oh, but I don't know what it is yet. Oh, thought, just moo. Oh, I know what it is. It's blah, 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 blah. Nope. Don't ever settle for a thought answer. It has to be as obvious as the sun shining directly in your face, and it will be. We're at time? Oh, thank you. Now, a little later down the road, when you're investigating the apparent dualistic constructs that appear in the senses, particularly in the visual field, as I was talking with the gentleman yesterday about. A similar approach, although you don't apply will to it so much. It's more just a curiosity, but an alertness and a sort of focused attention on one visual object. It can be anything. A light, a jacket, the ground. It can also be the object, the field of objects as you're walking and so forth. So you take in that visual experience, let's say it's a tree. And now, at this point, hopefully we know, and you have direct insight. We're not talking about the idea of a tree. We're not talking about your mind's reflection of that tree. We're talking about that, just as it is. It ends up sort of deconstructing into colors and shapes, and even those monikers, those qualities of that can be dropped. So there's just that. And the question, where's my evidence of a boundary between me and that, or the perceiver of that and that? And then we look. Just look. And the way we look is similar to when we ask a question like, what is mu? Who am I? And that we're looking as non-conceptually as possible. We're looking in the direct, immediate experience. And be patient. What am I referencing? What's my data point that says I'm sitting in a chair and there's an audience out there? The mind puts it together that way. That's a thought, that's fine. But just like looking at an optical illusion, you can see the mind can easily be fooled. So where's my actual evidence that there is someone here seeing someone there in the visual, in the scene? Don't, and never settle for the conclusion that there is no evidence. You can figure that out pretty quick. But keep looking until it's like a true aha moment where it's not, you can't have the illusion back of separation. You can also ask yourself, where do I see that? Where is that seen? What makes it seem like it's outside without thinking about it, or over there? And so where is that? See if you can find how it's also in here and out there at the same time. When people first taste this, it often actually happens right after an initial awakening for a time, and then it kind of goes away for a while. But what's interesting is when people first experience it, often they're so convinced that they didn't see what they saw. Couldn't be that. No. Something happened with my glasses. The computer was, I think it was a power problem with the computer when they just told me like the computer is outside the window and the window is inside me. Something like that, right? Like, no, actually, I think it's really amazing, like the naive description the mind will give, and that we actually believe it. Oh no, it must have been a power fluctuation or something. So it's really easy to overlook this. Well, obviously, because we overlook it all day long. But even when we start to directly experience non-duality or the lack of having a subject-object split. Even when we first start to experience that, doubt can sneak in because it's so, in a sense, it's so subtle, but it's also not subtle. One way of saying it is we just trust thoughts so much. We trust the mental overlay so much. Because, and it's important to have it to some degree to function, but you can truly and definitively see through it as reality. The suggestion that it's representing something, the appearance of the room, the appearance of the objects in the room and the people in the room in relative position to one another. The belief, the feeling, if we really buy into that mental overlay, is that represents what's actually here. When you see that it doesn't, or you see what's actually here, it's just so, in a sense, it's so startling that through habit, we just grab onto something. We grab onto something, oh no, can't be that. So we'll grab onto doubt. But keep at it. Keep questioning. Where's the boundary? Is there a boundary? You can work with any sense field doing this, a sound, a physical sensation, and sometimes working between the sense fields, sensation, sound, visual, forms, shapes, objects, can be helpful to kind of feel the crossover in the flavor of non-dual. Non-dual is more naturally accessible in the sound field and in the sense field when you're not feeling intense emotions. When you're feeling intense emotions, it's much harder in the sense field. We have a tendency to go up into our head and feel as if there's almost a split between the body and mind. We don't want to touch down into those intense feelings. But when you're relaxed, the body sense field is much more naturally non-dualistic experientially. But the visual field, it has to be clarified there. You can also, here's a third way of approaching the same thing, and I think we're almost out of time, is looking at an object. You can ask, well, first you can just notice, I can move my attention to an object, visual object. Okay? Now, engaging one object, one visual experience, you can ask yourself, where is the attention? Is it here? Is it there? Is it in both? Is it somewhere between? Just look for it. Is the attention emanating from the experience? And if it is, if it's both, well, what does bothness mean? Suddenly it's just one appearing, not in any particular place, right where it is. So noticing that the idea that we move our attention, and in a sense we do, but even that's an afterthought. When we're engaged in that, attention feels like this, like flashlight. We can move around. But if you just stop and actually engage one visual experience and ask, where is attention right now? Excuse me, where is attention right now? What is it emanating from? Is the attention apart from the object? And that can be a pretty powerful approach as well.